Hey everybody. This is a quick video about finding effective research. I want to start at the end though with research. So, um, I like to think of research in two categories. So, number one is primary research, research that you conduct yourself, and secondary research that others have already conducted. So I think as you're going about researching, it's easy to think like, man, I'm the novice here. Everybody else has more to say. Um, so what I mean by research is, interviews, studies, observations, surveys, annotated bibliographies. There's all different kinds of ways that you can get information, and a lot of it takes time and energy, and it can be tempting to think others, professionals in the field, already know this. There's a value to the primary research, though. There's an authenticity and realisticness that is just more compelling in some ways, which is why I think it's better not to just discount one or the other. Plus, how do you get to be an expert who does secondary research, or who is secondary research to other people? You conduct your own primary research. Um, I think it's worth knowing the difference between how those two work, though. Okay, what do I mean when I say effective? So, there's a helpful acronym called the RADAR acronym. I've used other ones. There's one called the CRAP acronym. I'm going with RADAR here. Okay, rationale, authority, date, accuracy, and relevance. There are questions that go along with, okay, that I've made up that go along with these. With rationale, a question you can ask yourself, you come across a source and you ask yourself, does this source, do these people behind this source have some kind of bias, some kind of agenda, something that they're trying to prove? If so, you got to be a little bit skeptical. Is this a reputable source? Have you heard about them before in a good context, hopefully? Um, I think accuracy comes back to this as well. So, how can you find out if it's reputable? Probably you might need to do research about the research. Um, is this info recent enough? Certain topics, um, date matters more than others. If you're writing about Shakespeare, you can perfectly legitimately quote a source from the 1920s about the play that you're working on because it has a long shelf life. If the words make sense to your audience, not a problem. If you're writing about the most up to date battery technology and you go from 4 years ago, it's like, ugh, probably outdated by now. So, is this information recent enough for my project? I think is a good way to think about it. Accuracy. Can I find this info elsewhere? Triangulation is another way of thinking about this one. So, there's a fantastic claim made by a source. Carl Sagan famously said, fantastic claims require fantastic evidence. Yes, you're going to want to go and say, yeah, that's amazing. Definitely that's going to show up all over the place if it's true. Snopes.com might be a place that you can go to say, it's a debunking website and stuff like that. Do your research about your research. Make sure that you're actually using quality sources. So, is this the right source? Um, I guess we could have started with that, couldn't we? There are times where you find a source, all of these other categories fit, but you got to ask yourself, are they even talking about the right thing? It seems like they are. Um, Things to think about. You may benefit from an off-topic source. So there may be information in it that is applicable and that is useful and interesting. This actually happened to me in my dissertation. Like I had a reading list that was so long, I just made the list, submitted that for approval, and then worked my way through it. Came across some sources where I'm like, this isn't as closely related as I thought it would be. But then ended up being like, it's not related from what I initially thought I wanted, but it has applications in this other way. That kind of thing can happen. It can change the direction of your research if you find a source that may not be the right source. So I'm saying you may have a vision in mind of what you want your research to be. You may find a source that doesn't fit that perfectly. Don't be so white knuckled on your vision for your research that you don't loosen up and say, well, maybe this is a good enough source that my project should change and not the source. Okay. Finding quality sources. There are three different topics I want to talk about. So, types of URLs. We've got so-so, hit or miss, .com, .net, .org, .se. I don't have anything against Sweden, but that's their... Different countries have different... I wonder if England is .uk. I would bet it would be. When you see those endings, probably not going to be as reliable as your endings with .gov, .edu. And given, you may go to youtube.com and find a YouTube channel from MIT, which is going to be a .edu site if you go directly there. So that's what I mean by hit or miss. Like, you could also find a YouTube channel from Uncle Joe's garage site, where he's hosting it out of his garage. Not to say anything bad about Uncle Bob, so-and-so's garage expertise, but probably going back to the RADAR acronym, might be better to go with a more reliable source. Their livelihood is dependent on other people finding their material useful and accurate. Uncle Bob, may not care if he's presenting accurate information, probably not as held to the same rigorous standards. Okay, really push for certain URL types. Google Scholar, I think, is a really useful tool. You can Google Scholar to find it, or you can just type in scholar.google.com. It's got free peer-reviewed journal articles. The problem is that it also there are also non-free peer-reviewed journal articles there. There's books. There's all kinds of ways you can narrow the search. I'm going to make a pitch for library databases, though, because they have almost all of those same free sources, but they also have ones that you would normally have to pay for. If you went through Google Scholar, you'd have to pay for these sources, but the university has a subscription to certain databases, and there you have it. They contain citation information. You're going to have to figure out, do I cite this Uncle Bob? Or do I cite it as YouTube? Or do I cite it as... There's all of these things you need to figure out. If you don't even want to worry about that, library databases have some good information, reliable and valuable. Peer-reviewed means there has been a process that they have gone through to make sure that they are reliable and quality sources. I'm just thinking of a book review that I published that not only was the writing had to go through a peer review process, but actually I didn't realize when I signed up for it that I actually had to design the website that it would be on. So I had to teach myself web design stuff. It worked out okay. It took some it's a process, though, that all of those peer-reviewed sources go through. Okay, now you have more information about finding effective research. Yay!